With the release of Eternal It Take Two and the very negative, deserved reception for that album, I thought I would revisit Pink Tape, and obviously it's Uzi's most experimental album, so I wanted to see how it holds up in his discography since Eternal It Take Two. And I gotta be honest, it's aged great, and I think that's super underrated, and I think we got our criticisms wrong on this album, and I think there was a big detriment to hating on this album when it comes to Eternal It Take Two. I think Pink Tape has affected Eternal It Take Two, so I want to get into this and why it's underrated. So I want to talk about how this album's actually good and underrated, and then I want to get into how it's affected his catalog and affected Uzi's career going forward with the criticisms for this album. One of the biggest criticisms towards this album was its length. It's an hour and a half. If you count the bonus tracks, it's like an hour and 34 minutes, and like normally it's like an hour 27 minutes. So yes, it's a long album, super long album, and the amount of genres and experimentation he does is insane on this album, and that was a big criticism as well. Like the Chop Suey cover, like certain genres he tackles on this album don't really work for some people, but I generally think his experimentation does work in his favor on this album. And I get that it's long, but I also think that the sequencing of the album is great. Like you look at the Flood of the Face is a great opener, and then you go into track 2, Suicide Doors, A, Crush 'Em, Amped, X2. All of those songs are super like rage heavy, and they have this very brash energy to them, and I think the sequencing of this track list continues this. After that we get Died and Came Back, Spitting in That Fire, I Got It, and this is kind of more trap, melodic, Uzi, Endless Fashion. I don't love Endless Fashion, I understand the criticisms for that song. Mama I'm Sorry, All Alone, like all that track run is super melodic. So again, the sequencing of the album, the different genres he's tackling, the different styles he's tackling is sequenced in a way that is cohesive and works, in my opinion. And I think tackling all these genres and experimenting was great for Uzi. We haven't seen this much experimentation from Uzi. It really just showed his diversity as an artist and what he could actually do if he's capable. So to get back to the track list, like we get that Just Wanna Rock, which is one of the biggest songs. Fire Alarm, super experimental. I think Fire Alarm's the best song on the album. And then we get into that more punk section of the album with the Chop Suey cover, which I don't think is that bad. I understand the criticisms. I would rather listen to the Chop Suey original version, but what rapper who is making a cover of a punk rock song on their album? Like name one rapper that's doing that, to be honest. So even if you don't like it, I think you can respect Uzi for doing that and putting it on an album. And then we get Werewolf, which is basically a Bring Me the Horizon song. Like I don't think Uzi contributed much to it, but the fact that he put it on his album is very respectable, and I think it was a great choice. Then we get Pluto to Mars, Patience, Days Come and Go, which that 3-track run again is in that Uzi and kind of like spacey Uzi vibe that I really like, and I think that 3-track run is great. And then Rehab, which is one of the most introspective songs Uzi's ever done. I think that song's great and shows vulnerability from Uzi that we don't really see too much, especially after Eternal It Take Two, which I'm gonna get into the comparisons of those albums. But like, yeah, seeing introspective Uzi is great, and him talking about his experience in Rehab is just really touching and one of his best lyrical songs for sure. And then the last song is The End with Baby Metal. This song is super chaotic, but it represents this album being chaotic. Like I've been mentioning, it tackles so many different genres throughout this whole album, and then to end on this song, which is a Baby Metal song, to be honest, but it's super chaotic, it's all over the place, and it really feels like an outro, an anime outro to be exact. So yeah, I think this track list is great. The only songs that I don't love are All Alone, and yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I honestly like almost every song on this album, I except Endless Fashion and All Alone. Those are my two, but even the bonus tracks too, I'm not going to touch on them too much, but the bonus tracks are good as well. I think they add some value to the album, but I'm glad they weren't included. So that's my defense of Pink Tape, and I want to get into why I think it's affected his career now. There's so many cases of artists who go off in different directions, but there's always that one album that fans will think of, oh, this is where they really started to experiment and go in a different direction. There's so many cases that come in mind. Kanye, Tyler the Creator, like, yeah, there's so many cases of there's a certain album in that discography that really set them on a different trend in their career. And I think Pink Tape could have been this if it wasn't so criticized, and if it actually got the love that I think it deserves. I think we wouldn't have seen EA2. We've seen Uzi in an interview recently. He said that he wanted to give the fans the old Uzi sound, and I think that's terrible because we've seen the outcome of that. If Pink Tape got praised for its experimental value and like all of that kind of stuff, I think we could have seen EA2 in a completely different direction, and we would have seen a more artistic and experimental Uzi that I think could have just blossomed into something new. And I understand the criticism of Pink Tape. I understand that people don't love that album, but I think it would have been so much better if Uzi would have gone in that more experimental direction for more albums in the future, because he could have gotten better at that. His producing ear, his vocal ear, like whatever, he would have just gotten better as an artist if he continued to experiment like Pink Tape. And I'm not saying he never will again, because we've only gotten one more album after Pink Tape, but I think if Pink Tape was praised more for experimental taste, I think Uzi could have gone in a different direction and blossomed more as an artistic experimental guy, because we know Uzi has a pretty great music taste, like I was just explaining with the track list of Pink Tape. Like there's so many genres he's tackling that we know he has a musical ear for so many different genres. And when we see EA2, like it's slop. It really is just slop. It's terrible trap music that I don't think anyone's bumping after release. So overall, I think Pink Tape is really in-your-face album with so many different genres, so many experimentation, that I think in the end really comes together to form a cohesive project. I will always defend Pink Tape. If you want to argue with me in the comments down below, I'm so down, because I'll defend like so many of these songs except Endless Fashion and All Alone, like, and Chop Suey. I don't know if I can defend that song, but yeah, I think this is such an in-your-face album, such an experimental album that I think really works. It's really, again, in your face. I know I said that 3 times, but yeah, it's an hour and a half of just so many different genres and so many experimentations. Like, as a music fan, I love that, and I love going through this album as a full listen. So let me know your thoughts on this, and I really think Uzi could have gone in a different direction for EA2 if this album actually got the praise it deserved, and we see Uzi go in a more experimental artistic direction for EA2. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on this in the comments down below. Do you think Pink Tape is underrated? Do you think it's good? And what are your thoughts on EA2? I know a lot of people hate on it, but I've seen some defenders, so defend EA2. Do you think EA2 is better than Pink Tape? I'm trying to hit 1,000 subs before the end of the year, so let's make it happen.